Welcome to Toffee Blue View, your source for all things Everton. I'm Gerry, Terry, Max, the victory pyramid. It's pretty wonderful. So we need to talk about Europa League. It's a thing. Once Everton started winning again, people started talking about it. Some people were like, no, I don't want it. Other people are like, you're an idiot if you don't want it. And you see all these kinds of opinions on the social media. I'm sure you hear it if you talk to other humans at the pub and whatnot. It's an interesting situation. Right now, Everton are currently 4 points out of 7th. All right? I believe that's Wolves that are in 7th right now, who are playing well. Just got a win over United this week. I mean, they're a good team. We've known they're a good team. Before they even came to the Premier League, we knew they were pretty good. But right now we have to think about Wolves and Watford. That's pretty much who we'd be scrapping for 7th place. Right now, just to think about like likelihood, and I'm sorry I'm talking too much, but this is a thing I got to get out. We've got Arsenal, Fulham, United, Palace, Burnley, and Spurs left. Okay? Wolves have Southampton, Brighton, Arsenal, Watford, Fulham, and Liverpool. And Watford's got Arsenal, Huddersfield, Southampton, Wolves, Chelsea, and West Ham. It's pretty balanced, all three of those. All right? So I think it could really go either way. If I want to be really technical, the Wolves have the easiest path. But not by much. It's very minimal. So the question here, guys, is let's start with how likely do we feel like it is actually that we even get 7th place and manage to get a Europa League spot? Terry, you went on record last time as saying, should we be talking about this? So let's just get your opinion. Pretend like we should. And let's figure out like likelihood of actually getting 7th.
Likelihood of getting 7th is different to the likelihood of getting the Europa League. Because the Europa League, the 7th place is only a Europa League spot if City win the FA Cup, or a team that is in one of the European places winning the FA Cup. So currently, I don't remember the 4th team, but Watford, Wolves, and Manchester City are all in, and Brighton, there we go, and Brighton are all in the FA Cup semi-final. Now, if Man City win the FA Cup, then its 7th becomes the European slot. Mm-hmm. If Wolves, Watford, or Brighton win it, which is, City are better than them, but you never know. Wolves and Watford are, because I've surprised us before, probably less likely that it's Brighton. If they win the FA Cup, then it doesn't matter. We could be 7th and we still wouldn't get Europe. If Wolves win the FA Cup, if Watford win the FA Cup, they're in Europe, no matter where they finish.
Right.
Now, if Man City do win it, we've still got a tall order on to get that 7th spot, because ours is probably the slightly, not by much, but it's the hardest running, because we've got to play Man United, we've got to play Arsenal, we've got to play Spurs. They are all still fighting for Champions League spaces, so they will be needing to beat us. There'll be none of this, like, catch them on, flip-flops on, anything like that. I don't think it's very likely that we're going to do it. Not because I don't think we can do it. I think we may have left it a bit late. I think we're going to run out of games before we can overhaul them. And even if we do, there's always the chance that they could turn around and go, well, we only need to win. If one of the Wolves or Watford, the winner of that semi-final, if they fall away in the league, they can still turn around and say, we only need to win one game, and we're in Europe. So it's not likely, but the answer to your next question is yes, we absolutely should be striving to be in Europe. We'll touch Max talk first, and then we'll go into why I think that. But
okay, and I'm going to go ahead and say I think we're going to finish in 8th. I think we will not quite get there, and we'll get to the other question in a minute. Spoiler, Terry, with your preemptive answers. Max, what do you think about possibilities of getting 7th? Let's be more specific. Europa League, because I think City's going to win FA Cup, but it's not a definite.
Yeah, probably, but I think my opinion, if Everton were going to achieve 7th place, has changed a hell of a lot now following Wolves' 2-1 win over United. Like, I don't know. I just feel like all the momentum's swinging their way at the moment, and within the 1 point, I was, obviously after the good performance against Liverpool, after Chelsea, after West Ham, thinking within 1 point, and if Wolves get beat by Manchester United, it could, there could be a real high probability of us attaining that, but it's probably, I haven't seen Wolves against, I haven't seen the game or the highlights or anything, but that's not really a surprise result. Like, Wolves have been that team everyone's expected them to be since they've come up from the Championship. Like, they were champions of the second division, and they've just, they've been absolutely fantastic. They've got a modern template as a club as a whole. I feel from Mendes to Espirito Santo to the formation that they play, like, and the deserving of being where they are. As to whether I'd want Everton to finish in that 7th place, it means we're in the second qualifying round, and it means we'd have to do the tours of the slums of Europe, playing against God knows who, and that tends to be more of a hindrance to your season in the long run, as we've seen from last season. Like, even the qualifying rounds, even then weren't that much of a cakewalk, and we just got absolutely decimated in the group stages. Like, it was embarrassing. Like, Atalanta had a really good season that season. Leon, and still are today, a really top team, and we even bloody struggled against Limassol. I know it's an entirely different team, but if you just think in the long run, how would that parallel to our Premier League season? And yeah, I want Everton to be fighting on all fronts, and I want us to be in European competition. However, as we've talked about many other times on the show, like, I just don't feel like we've got the depth at the moment. Like, on that bench, our reluctancy to bring Lookman on in particular, like, that's the quality of the backup that you need. Like, it can't be Theo Walcott, it can't be Cenk Tosun, but it's getting to that point now where he's not coming on and changing games for us. So yeah, I don't feel like Everton have got a strong enough squad, and who knows? Depending on, I don't know what kind of approach we're going to take in terms of recruitment in the summer. But I think that needs to be, in the long term aim, in that the players that we do recruit have to lend a hand in if we do get into European competition, or start getting to the latter phases of a cup competition, that they can lend a hand and they can be an able deputy, because there's with our club, I feel at the minute, in terms of the squad, there's a huge drop off in quality between the starting 11 and the bench, and that's something that we've got to aim at changing.
Yeah, you look at the squads the past 4 years that finished around 7th and still made Europa League. Burnley finished 7th and is currently in 17th.
Yeah, they crushed out.
We were the team before that. We had finished in 7th the year before, and we finished 8th. West Ham the year before was in 7th. They finished 11th the next year. And Southampton, oddly enough, was 7th, and the next year they were 6th. So, however, I think they were pretty solid in terms of their squad depth and their manager situation at that point. I don't know that it really crushes your team. You know what I mean? Like, it may feel like it crushes your squad to go, but most of these teams that crashed out so early, they were playing with kids. They threw kids in their games. They weren't playing a lot of their first-team players at all. We played more of our first-team players than I expected in those early rounds. It's just really hard to get out of the groups after you get past those initial stages in the middle of the summer like that, early in the summer. It's just not easy. Having said that, I want Europa League. I want European football every single year. I don't care if we're barely stitching together 11 players to start. I want it. It's just the idea of of playing any more games excites me, period. Can't help it. So, Terry, go ahead and talk. I had to get that off my chest, though, at some point.
Well, no, I'm in full agreement. I mean, the cons of the competition are legitimate. Like Max touched on a bit there. It is very demanding on your squad. It does have an effect on your league campaign if you haven't got the appropriate level of quality and numbers to cope with it. That is a legitimate concern. Now, a lot of people who don't want to get in the Europa League, I don't think it's because they dislike the Europa League. I think it's because they feel the foundation isn't in place yet for us to really go into it and make a good effort in it. Like, I think a lot of people would be like, well, we'll get this summer's recruitment out the way and then hopefully have a much more stripped back, streamlined squad with better quality. And then if we get in Europe next year, we'll go into the season after and have a lot more about us to really go for it. Legitimate, point of view, but for me, it's just I always want Everton to be in Europe. The drawbacks for me are nowhere near as enough to put me off the benefits that you get. Like there are extra games, but it has a massive effect on status as a club. It has a massive effect on your attractiveness to new players. Now, you could say, well, whenever we've been in Europe in the past, we haven't, it hasn't affected the That's true. But I think with this new transfer strategy that Brands has alluded to in the last couple of weeks, we're going to be looking to pick up young players, mostly from other leagues in Europe and abroad and in South America. Now, they will be attracted by a club playing European football. It might not made much of a difference to if we were going to sign a player from Burnley who are already established in the Premier League and they just want to go to a bigger, better club. Europe is a massive carrot for new players, especially young new players from other countries, because it's only really this country where we don't take the Europa League very seriously. Like, we actually are the only club who treat the Europa League with respect from the offset. The bigger clubs do it when they get later in the competition and their league form's gone a bit wonky and they see it as an opportunity to get in the Champions League. And earlier in the competition, the bigger teams just play their second string. And the reason it's seen as sort of a poison chalice, as you touched on before, it's because a lot of the clubs who haven't got the infrastructure, haven't got the size as a club to cope with European football, it really adversely affects them. Now, you listed off the teams who finished 7th and gone in the earlier rounds. Burnley finished 17th the year after, or well, they might finish 17th and it's not over yet, but it's affected them. They didn't even play in the group stage. They haven't really, they can't blame that. That's because they're not, as a club, big enough to play European football yet. They need to build up into it. We built up into it. Everton have got the squad might not be ready. It's a legitimate concern size-wise. The first team, if we just played European football, would be fine. But if we went into Europe, other teams around Europe were like, I really don't want to get Everton because they're a good team and they always do, apart from the anomaly of last season, they always do quite well in the Europa League. Now, last season, I don't think our season was poor due to the Europa League. I think it was poor because of a botched transfer window, which left us with a horribly unbalanced squad. We had 3 number 10s and 1 striker. It just didn't work, and it didn't help, don't get me wrong, but the demands physically were not the cause of our problems. They were a symptom of our problems, that we didn't have the depth in the right areas. We had 1 left back who was over 30 and we were playing twice a week. I just think attractiveness to players, attractiveness to sponsors. If we're in the Europa League every single year and we just re-signed with Umbro because we weren't attractive enough to some of the bigger brands at a high tier, maybe we would be if we were in Europe every year. We've got all those eyeballs on us. I understand why people are a bit apprehensive about Europe because of the effect it can have on the league campaign, but I think Everton belong in Europe. I think Everton have got the infrastructure and the history to be in Europe consistently, and I think we should always want to be and just do what the other big clubs do and just weather the negative effects and don't let it derail your season, because all the other clubs, the top 6 clubs, they don't let European football wreck their season because they're used to being in it. Mm-hmm. We are, big picture wise over the last 15, 20 years, we're used to being in Europe. Burnley aren't, West Ham aren't, Southampton aren't. We're the 7th biggest club in Europe, not in Europe, in England. That'd be great. 7th biggest currently in England. We're the team who would be going into Europe and belonging there. The other clubs, they get it one season, they don't do very well, they play kids or they crash out, never see them again. Everton, I think a year out of Europe should be the exception, not a year into Europe like the rest of them.
Yeah. For me, it's the same. It's a similar kind of thing. You want to be competing for cups. You know, you want to actually have a legitimate shot at silverware, regardless of what it is. You know, so I want us to stay in League Cup as long as possible. I want us to stay in FA Cup as long as possible. And you know, whether it's Europa League, Champions League, I don't care. I just want us to have more opportunities to play, and it's such a big thing. I remember when there was that season when West Ham was going to have Europa League, and they were going to, and they were moving to their new stadium, and that's when this rivalry thing developed. You know what I mean? It really took a hold. This whole West Ham started stealing players from us that we were talking to. You know, and they had Europa League, we didn't, and they had their big new stadium, and it was like they were hitting this new era. You know what I mean? And that Europa League aspect was really convincing for some players. The idea of playing in Europe, it's a big thing. It's a big deal. Are we being impatient? You know what I mean? It's a question. You know, we're saying, yeah, we want to go ahead and get there, and I think a lot of people would say, why don't we be patient and build a base first? I get that. It's what you're saying, Terry. That other people would be saying. Honestly, though, I feel like the more we play, the more experience we get, and we need to be getting that experience as a culture, like as a collective. You know what I mean? And that's going to help us prep for the ones in the future. So there's a couple ways of looking at it here. I don't think that people who don't want Europa League are silly. I think they want what's best for the club. I just happen to think this might be best for the club if it happens. And you know what? This conversation could be all for naught. Finish in 8.
Don't get me wrong. I think the club are preparing for next season, thinking they're not in Europe, and it will. I sort of can't lose in this scenario because I don't think it will be a bad thing if we're not in Europe, because it will be more within our development plan, big picture wise. I think it'd be more it'd be more beneficial in a lot of ways to the players, and then go into Europe maybe next time a lot more prepared and a lot more capable. But I just think with everything else, like sponsors for the stadium, everything, status, all those things, those variables, I would imagine that the boardroom want to be in Europe, and then let's just deal with it on the pitch. Whereas the players and the coaching staff probably, well, maybe not the players, but the coaching staff and that side of things probably thinking, maybe not this time. We've got stuff to do before we do that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think what you said earlier though, Terry, and I've had that conversation before, like historical context is hugely important when it comes to teams competing. It's not just specific to the Europa League. I think it's just European football in general. Like, and I think the finest example of that is when you got, when you see when Real Madrid did the unthinkable and won the Champions League year after year after year. That comes from being in the Champions League for so long, and as you say, like Everton, I think historically was still the 4th most successful club in English football. So we should be in and around Europe every season, ideally. And you cast your mind back to you can excuse last campaign, but the last couple of times we've been in the Europa League, I think it was the 14-15 season before we were knocked out by Dynamo Kiev. A lot of, not just our supporters, but a lot of fans that were watching the Europa League assumed we were one of the favourites to go on and win the bloody thing. And catch your mind back, I'm going to say, where I can't remember the season to date, but when we were knocked out on pens against Fiorentina, for example, when we compete in the Europa League, we do assemble a really good, we have a real good go at it. And as Teddy said, you look at our current starting 11, you see some of the, just from an individual basis, like, could you imagine, he's got experience at Champions League football with Shakhtar. Can you imagine just how good Bernard would be? in the Europa League, Luca Dean in the Europa League, Richarlison in the Europa League. They all, that gets me excited. The idea of seeing those players in European football and just, what levels could they reach. But, and I agree with everything you're saying in terms of the marketability of the club and sponsorship endorsements and just, getting us out there. But when it comes to falling back on that squad depth, it's just something that isn't there. And that worries me in that it stunts our progress in regards to league finishing, in terms of morale, in terms of fitness. Because don't forget, when you're starting your season, July? I feel like we need a good pre-season because, you look at a lot of the new signings from last summer, they didn't get a full pre-season with Everton.
Yeah.
And I feel like that'd help them out, a huge lot. So
plus, selfishly, if for some reason some kind of Everton trip to America happens, if we're playing Europa League in July, that will be off. So just saying, that's my argument against it.
I think the practical reality is we're not going to get it, and it's probably no bad thing for on the pitch reasons. It'll help the club in their recovery from the several years of mismanagement they've had. We're currently in the middle of a reset. We've seen stories of all the old players are going to get let go, and we're going to build up nothing but youth and build a team and grow a team from young players and so on. So they could probably do with being out of Europe next season, realistically, and then when the cement is dry, they'll go back into Europe and we'll reassume our position as what I think. I mean, I've spoken to people when I've been on holiday and stuff like that. I think the perception of Everton, and I don't want this to go away, is you look at the Premier League and the English teams and you think the top six, and you say, well, who's the Europa League club in England? They go Everton, because we've been in it a lot. We always, apart from last season, which was an anomaly because, let's be honest, that season was as shit as it gets with all the manager changes and stuff like that. But they know us as the big... the same way you look at France and go Lyon. Like, Memphis Depay is Thursday night Neymar. He's like... You look at France and you see Lyon in the Europa League. You think they're a top Europa League team. Might not be a Champions League team, but they're a top Europa League team. I think that's the way we're perceived. Look at our players. Max said it. We went in the Europa League. You'd say they've got Bernard, they've got Sigurdsson, they've got Andre Gomez, they've got Luca Dean. They've got good players. Our perception is the Europa League level team in England. The same way you'd look at other countries and pick theirs out. We are, and I don't want that to go away by spending too long out of it, because 1 year in it, nobody looks at West Ham and thinks Europa League level team, even though realistically they're probably not that different than us. But big picture wise, perception wise, I still want to maintain that there's the top six, then there's Everton in the Europa League, and then everyone else is below that.
Thursday night Neymar comedy gold. My hat goes off to you. That was phenomenal.
Yeah, I was like, is that yours? Is that yours, or did you hear that from someone else? Because holy hell, I want to. I wish we could just end the video as soon as you said that.
That's what I was going to say. Thursday night Messi, but it just didn't roll off the tongue.
Thursday night Neymar is the alliteration. You gotta go with that, man.
There he is. The Memphis Depay is Thursday night Neymar, and Lyon are Thursday night Barca. And I think we are Thursday night. Who would it be? Man United. the team with the most sort of prestige of that bracket. Not in the Champions League. We never are in the Champions League. Hopefully that'll change in time. But they are in the Europa League, and they're always good, and they always beat other good teams. Like when we were in it with Martinez, and I just don't want that to go away. I don't want to spend so long out of it for the sake of, just setting up, to correct mistakes we made in the transfer market. If we're out of it for next season, I want that to be the end of it. We're back in it, and we're back in it for good after that. Ideally, because we win the FA Cup, not because we finished 7th. I'd like to win the FA Cup and go straight into it in a perfect world.
Yeah.
You need to be in touch with some Lyon fans to be able to market the Thursday Night Neymar T-shirts and posters. I'm telling you, that's so good. All right, we need to end because this has taken like 1,000 hours. So that's it for our Europa League segment. It's more like Europa League ? Because that's what we're doing. If you've been digging the videos, please subscribe to the Toffee Blues YouTube channel. We'd sincerely appreciate it. If you want more Terry, check out his Twitter. He'll tell you when he's going to appear on the Liverpool Echo fan jury. And then there's Max. He appears often on the Toffee Blues website, dropping his knowledge on there about Everton. So keep it on his Twitter. He'll tell you when he's going to be there. And you can look at my Twitter just for like videos of my kid. Hey. All right, we're going to move on. This is our last video segment. We're going to move on to the quiz between Terry and Max. It's a starting 11 quiz. They got to name the starters and subs from a match from the past. So if you're interested into that kind of thing, if you're interested, switch over to the pod. All right, I've given you time to. And that's it. Bye.